substantial development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. This was the most important conclusion of the Brundtland report at that point of time. And there were, of course, several other milestones like Rio Summit and then Kyoto Protocol, etc. I don't want to talk about this because experts are here. Most important thing to me was that when it was connected with MDGs, Sustainable Development Goals were connected with MDGs, and that became one of the point in the sense that we were more conscious in terms of that when we will be assessed in 2030, then we will see what we have actually missed, so to speak. And we have missed a lot. There is no doubt about it, and we don't have to say it because it's written all over that we have abused Mother Nature or, the climate as was given to us, and in the name of so-called development, specifically capitalist industrial development. And at that point of time, we only knew about that we have to develop and compete. Never thought about that while doing that, we will be creating the self-destructive traps where we actually be helpless. Now that we are feeling helpless and we are more mindful about it. So sustainable development generally, social science-wise or even sociologically speaking, we think three things. One is obviously fighting against poverty, hunger, disease, most of the time economic yardstick. Second one is environmental sustainability, which has become a real headache for all of us. And the third broad one in SDG, combined with the MDG, is social inclusion. That is our commitment to future economic and technological progress under conditions of fairness and equitable access to public services for irrespective of gender, class, ethnic origin, religion, race, disability, language, nation, etc. So in a way, sustainable development actually should be one of our priority understanding and how it has affected our daily lives. Those who live in Kolkata or even other districts of West Bengal know that we are now passing through terrible summers, which we never passed for the last 3 years. And that is told that how we have abused our climatic positions. And our position as agents of bearer of human civilization and culture, we did not understand that progress doesn't mean we becoming affluent. Progress means from all aspects of the thing. So one of the shock of the day was COVID-19, and we still are figuring out what has happened. We are still figuring out why we are having these things, and we are still trying to say that, well, we know or we do not know. We haven't been able to tell. We're just guessing games, etc. So the Sustainable Development Goals report of 2022 provides us with a grim picture that if we are to pass the test in 2030, it will be a problematic matter realistically from all aspects. I work a little bit on area of gender, so I know that it's a humiliating situation, the progress we made in terms of gender equality and equity. With this, I will say the query, the reason we are actually doing this as part of our Adda Baithak is that we have a query, a concern, and uncertainties that hang over us that the SDGs are an important idea, but could they help finally to move the world to a sustainable trajectory? So our trajectory for the future is actually our concern. Thank you very much. I will now hand over the microphone to Professor Anupam Basu, our Vice Chancellor, who in spite of his fall and everything, apni okhane boshun sir, hand microphone. Na re bhai, acha thik ache. So here is our Vice Chancellor, Professor Anupam Basu.
A very good afternoon to all of you. There are appropriate people to discuss on this issue, but just looking at the title as Professor Anup Sinha has put in, Sustainable Development and Impossibility, I really feel that it's an impossible phenomenon, impossible proposition. Because if I take the word development, then we have to think of what we mean by development. And if I go by the way the society and the economics is going on, then development means something that is always at the cost of nature, at the cost of displacement. Although United Nations often talk about big goals and put some earmark, like we could not achieve it for the climate. We have seen that the advanced countries are dumping their waste in the eastern countries and the seas of our seas. That could not be stopped by UN. But those are some things where there will be a lot of discussion, and although Professor Gulabhadra is very thrifty about expenditure, but through these seminars we'll be spending some money all over the world. But actually, can we really think of changing the definition of development where it includes people, where it includes our living, which includes in turn our nature? The entire paradigm of the sense of development should be changed before we can talk about sustainable development. If we keep the notion, because, for example, I have not seen a single urban development that has not caused displacement. Although you can find chunks of papers on development without displacement. That has not been done because of economic reasons. Again, I am not the right person, and I feel shaky to speak these things in front of Professor Sinha and Professor Bhagwan Rai and others. So I'd be very keen to know about that. But frankly speaking, please excuse me, Professor Bhadro, I'm starting it with a pessimistic note, and I wish that I can be ushered or pushed to an optimistic future. Thank you very much.
I am an incurable optimist, sir, so I always have to live by that. Otherwise, the pessimism, if I make pessimism my life's position, I would have died long back. So with the optimism, now I call my good friend and my batchmate, Professor Dr. Anup Kumar Sinha, who is an economist with his tremendous repute. He had his PhD from the University of Southern California, Los Angeles. He had his MSc in Economics from University of Rochester, and Masters in Economics in Calcutta, and BA in Economics from Presidency College, where we met. Dr. Sinha has taught at Presidency College and Indian Institute of Management. He served IIMC as a professor of economics for 25 years. He served 3 terms on the Board of Governors at IIMC and also as the Dean during 2003-2006. He received the Best Faculty Award from the IIMC Alumni Association in 2003 and 2004. In 2012, 2014 and 15, he won the Most Popular Teacher Award from the outgoing MBA students of IIMC. Professor Dr. Anup Kumar Sinha is the former director of Heritage Business School and mentor, and at this moment chief mentor now. And he has also served on the board of NABARD, and at the moment he is also associated with Bandhan Bank as their mentor. He held visiting appointments at Calcutta University, Indian Statistical Institute, University of Southern California, University of St. Louis, Curtin University at Perth, and Kyoto University. He has been actively engaged in training and consulting for a number of organizations in public and private sector like Bandhan Bank, etc. And Anup is a good friend of mine. I've been trying to get Anup for a long time. And Anup keeps telling, I am in now United States. I am now in my daughter's so-and-so. I am this topic, Bula, I don't know anything. Finally, I got something, and so Anup is here. So I'm so glad to introduce my friend Anup Kumar Sinha, and Anup, it's all yours.
Constraints and problems, but the bigger framework is sustainability, that can be sustained, and I put it as an impossibility, put a question mark, because there are skeptical issues coming up in terms of the progress, our understanding, our beliefs, our vested interests, our ignorance, all put together. It seems like an impossibility, but this is not an impossibility in the usual sense that we fail to achieve something. This is fundamentally an existential question, that the future of the world and the human race might depend upon it. May not, but it might. You cannot rule out the possibility. Given that, I am going to be a little jerky. I am going to share with you certain aspects of the very large, complicated, interdisciplinary problem of sustainable development. And then, as we go along, hopefully, and once we hear Professor Bhagwan Das also, we will be having a better idea on the questions that will follow. Okay. The way I see it, human beings, we are part of nature, in the sense we are an animal species, we are part of the animal kingdom, but we hardly acknowledge that. So what we do is we look at nature, and particularly for the last 300 years or 250 years, the post-industrial phase of the human enterprise, we treat nature in two acute kind of ways. One is, we think that nature is an indefinite, unlimited gift hamper. So we take resources, we take resources and use them for our benefit. And benefits we certainly get out of that. The other is, simultaneously we think that it is a bottomless garbage dump. So whatever pollution we create, whatever the waste that we create, and we do waste significant amounts of stuff. Alright, so all that is dumped back into nature. So it's simultaneously a gift hamper and a garbage dump. The world is finite, clearly. The planet, if you understand systems, that we are a closed system. The planet Earth, we have only one planet at the date today which is livable. But what has happened is that the human enterprise has grown over the last 50 years. And you can see that while the planet is not growing, if the human enterprise is growing, growth for growth's sake, you're going to hit the boundaries, and clearly you can't break the boundaries easily. If you break, there'll be a catastrophic issue. All right. This itself, this particular diagram, so innocuous, has a wonderful history behind it. I won't go into that. Let me give you an idea. To give you an idea of how big this is, let me share with you the outcome of a big interdisciplinary, I think 60-odd scientists were involved in it from different disciplines. At the turn of the century, somewhere in England, I think it was Bradford, they had a big research program. What they did was, the human body is a machine, right? We need fuel from outside, food, to be able to expend energy and do work. If we just get the food to keep body and soul together, we can still do some work. That is called the somatic energy. Anything else, the help from outside that we get, for instance, I didn't walk on my legs to come here, a car drove me here. All right, so if we take all the extra somatic energy, that is what makes life developed. That's the difference between us and our hunting, gathering forefathers. So if you take what these scientists did, they made some heroic assumptions and they took an average. You can understand this is a very, very limited average, but it gives you an idea for comparison purposes. They said that one average human being can work without any external help up to 10 megajoules, that's a measure of work, per day per person. And they define this 10 megajoules as one human energy equivalent. They said that even at the hunting-gathering stage, they estimated that the HEE an individual possessed was 2. 2 meaning at that time we had fired, probably, you could cook, You had some primitive implements, etc. So external help was there. So it was 2. Many, many millennia later came the agricultural revolution, which was just 10,000 years ago. And by the end of the agricultural revolution, that is the beginning of the pre-industrial age, it was 4. Why 4? The wheel had come and animal labor was being used. So elephants did part of the work that we would have done earlier. By 2000, it had become from 4 to 19. And there was huge discrepancies. In America, it was 93, which means for the average American, 93 energy slaves were working. And for Bangladesh, it was just 4.1. They didn't portray the Indian number. I can't share it with you. But there was a wide variation. So it moved from 4 to 19 in 200 years, and population increased from 1 billion to 7 billion. So there must have been a 35-fold increase, 7 into 5-fold increase in the amount of resources we required to provide the energy to make our lives a little better. That is the good life, the industrial life, etc., etc. So it gives you an idea that how quick, it's referred to as the great acceleration. As our living conditions improved exponentially, so did the use of resources, and so did the production of wastes. Okay? So that's the flip side of the great acceleration. So this I explained to you. So what are we looking at? We are looking at understanding nature, if you're going to look at sustainable development, that the economy is contained within the natural system. It's not outside. It's not something borrowed from an interplanetary galaxy or something. So what does nature provide us? We normally, in economics, for instance, we think of resources. That is important. We, in a footnote, talk about wastes, how we dispose waste. But we forget that nature provides us with life-supporting services, the oxygen, the biochemical cycles from which we get the fertility of the topsoil, all right? The amenities that nature gives us. You know, we recharge ourselves, we want to see a good sunrise on the Puri beach. Those things are important to us in our lives. That's the aesthetic part, but it's still important. Very often, we just focus on resources and we focus on the waste sink little bit, not too much. We hear about a lot of problems. Global warming is arguably the most important, most talked about. But also there's pollution in the air and water, there's resource depletion, huge problem of resource, biodiversity, extinction of species. It is referred to as now the 6th mass extinction. And this is the first time that humans are here. So the previous 5 were before human beings inhabited the earth. Accumulation of hazardous waste, chemicals in our daily life, in our food, in our, oh, thank you so much. In our food, in our toiletries, in the fumes we inhale, etc., etc. So there are a lot of these problems, all right? Why is there then a debate? If we are realizing that this is the issue, and if we do business as usual, economic development as usual, economic growth as usual, it cannot be sustained, all right? There will be catastrophic changes in nature, which we cannot foretell with great accuracy, and hence we are unable to understand what kind of impact and consequences it will have. But the reason why there is a lot of diffidence in putting our heads together, and this has to be international. This is not India's problem, China's problem, or Donald Trump's problem. This is everybody's problem. We sink or swim together, right? That is the first understanding. It's a global problem. We can address a problem locally. We can ensure that the local nala in our neighborhood is kept clean and mosquitoes don't breed, and we keep it clean and aesthetically beautiful. Fine. But it's still not going to solve the existential issue of sustainability. There are a number of reasons. One is inference from scientific data vary on important parameters. like degree of risk, all right? Because these are unknown things. So there's no sort of precedent data on which you can fall back and say that, okay, this means this is going to happen. So we don't know the degree of risk. We don't know the exact scale and nature of the damage. We don't know the time scales, whether this will happen 5 years from now, 50 years from now, tomorrow. The consequences of new technologies, we are now talking about AI, robotics, etc. We don't know how they are going to affect our lives. Location of the problems, whether it's going to be Sundarbans first and Calcutta to sink first, or whether it's going to be Miami, we don't know. And of course, there are vested interests and there's ignorance. Typical ignorance is that this is a hoax or God will save us. All right, the God problem is very acute in United States because you can't lose kind of proposition that if the world is destroyed, we were very evil and God punished us. So that's a rational solution. Or if we are saved, then God saved us. Okay, so if nothing happens, and these are probabilistic, it's not equiprobable that you have sort of distributions of possibilities. Let me come to, this is I'm going to spend a little bit of time on because this is a very core conceptual issue. I'm not going to go into the Robert Solow story, but maybe later on I can tell. How do we operationalize sustainable development? What Bula mentioned, the Brundtland report definition of looking at future generations and saying that we live well, but we also ensure that they live well. This has to be operationalized. First of all, one way of operationalizing this is that, see, to live well, you require, let's say the most common way of living well is technology is often seen in terms of, sometimes I share this with my students. Think of a situation that you are a first-year kid in college. You have gone there and you are thinking of taking up cigarette smoking. You have experimented, you like the taste of tobacco, and you think it's good, smart thing, hip thing to do, and you're thinking, but you're worried about the pictures on the graphics on the cover of the cigarette packet, that it is so hideous and you're going to die of cancer and cancerous lungs are shown, etc. So you walk into a doctor's office before you take the decision. So you ask the doctor, when am I going to get cancer? How many cigarettes will get me cancer? Will I get cancer at 30 or 50 or 60 or 70? The doctor, poor fellow, will not be able to answer a single of your questions with clarity. He will all say that you are enhancing the chances of you. There are people who die without having cancer, having smoked 30 cigarettes a day. There are people who die of lung cancer and suffer without having ever touched a cigarette. So all kinds of things might happen. So you come out and you are a little put off. Garbage doctor, can't tell me anything. Now see, at this point when you come out of the doctor's office, you have three options. One option, you can say to hell with the doctor, I know there are risks. There are risks, so many other things in life that give me risk. Even when I cross the road in Kolkata, I have a risk of being run over. So I'm going to smoke. That's a very rational, conscious decision. You know what you are getting into and you have done that. Second is, you can say that, now Baba, maybe the doctor is saying there have been some research done, those guys know, why enhance the probability of getting some awful disease and suffer from it, I'm not going to smoke. That's also a very rational decision. The clear yes and no. There is a third one, it's the conditional decision. I say that, Tika, he's telling the truth, I can get cancer, but I read every day in the papers, there's so much of research going on in cancer medications, new molecules coming up, pharmaceutical industries are going, by the time I'm 18 now, by the time I'm 30, 40, there'll be a surefire cure for cancer. I can walk into, like buying a paracetamol, I can pop a pill and my cancer will be cured. So therefore I am going to smoke. Now this conditional belief in technology is stupid, if you ask me, though not impossible. Nobody can rule out that by the time 18 to 40, let's say 20 years later, you won't have a complete cure for cancer. But can I depend on that and say that I'm going to take a huge risk of getting cancer? Right? It, I think, is not a very wise decision to take. So our belief in technology, that sometimes there's this, and particularly people who deal with technology never have this. The worst offenders are economists who have nothing to do with technology, but will always say that technology will always come to our rescue. We are the worst offenders as a profession. The other aspect of sustainability issue is that which we are not being able. I have one more slide and I'll quit. The other issue is about equality, all right, or inequality. See, sustainable development is an issue of intra-generational inequality. If we eat more, the future generation will have less to eat, okay? But it's also true that if the intra-generational, this I'm talking about sustainability is intergenerational, within a generation, if you have large amount of inequality, there will be wastage of resources. The very rich will waste resources, the very poor will intensely use resources and mess up, say, overdrawing fresh water, over harvesting. So there'll be stress of two different kinds that will be created, all right? But if you look at the world, again on that front, there's a huge increase in economic inequalities and wealth, and nobody seems to be bothered too much about it. Nobody has the courage. Political authorities do not have the courage to touch it at all, okay? So if we look at the world is now sharply divided. There is a dominant view, and that's the majority view. I would say about 75% of the world's population believes in the dominant view that you have dominance over nature, natural resources are there to be used, material economic growth for a growing population, there are ample resource reserves or substitutes will come up. High-tech science will provide the solutions, and therefore be happy, eat, drink, and be merry. And there's a 25%, I would say, and I'm being a little liberal, that deep ecology, harmony with nature, all nature has intrinsic worth, elegantly simple material needs are required, earth supplies are limited, we look at appropriate technology, not dominating technology, and doing with enough, recycling for someone will need it tomorrow, right? So this is where we are, and I don't think we know where we want to go. So thank you. Those are I think I overshot a little bit, 5-6 minutes, but thank you very much for listening to me. And then I can pick up questions as we go along. Thank you.
If people want to ask questions now, we can give 5-7 minutes, or we can go with Professor Bhagwan Rai's presentation, and then we can have questions.
No, but I could not understand your view. What exactly do you mean? Are you with that 80% or 20%? The word die.
Huh?
Would the word die within just 20%?
It depends. See, you are looking at unknown unknowns. We don't know. We have never lived in that kind of world. All right. We have never lived something. Our human body is, I relate to these
Now
examples.
we've got so many renewable resources during the last 30 years or so. New technology is coming up. And so many substitutions we see in the world. Thanks to the various inventions and discoveries of the scientists. One can be a bit optimistic about
What about biodiversity? What about land use? What about climate change?
maybe we can use less land to produce more. Stanley Jevons, the economist, placed this question in 1884. His book was on coal question. Exactly, this was the question. If we use so much of dig, so much of coal, coal will go, the world will have nothing to sustain, and therefore the cold era is coming. This was the position on the whole question. The answer came. We got so many substitutable things so that we are not leaving that much on the possibility of retaining coal only. Coal has alternatives.
Is coal the only issue? Is fossil fuel the only issue? I'll give you one example.
Maybe
What I'm talking
get rid
about.
of the fossil fuel.
What I'm talking about, again, I take the human body as an example. Our normal temperature is 98.4 degrees or whatever, alright? Now, sometimes temperature rises. It's not a good, comfortable place to be.
That's
Right? So we take medicines or whatever, take rest, we drink vitamin C or whatever, come bring it down to the normal. Now, if you go to a doctor and say that for some reason, the normal temperature of the human body becomes 101 degrees, what will happen? No doctor will be able to tell you because we have not seen that, we don't know. But all we know now is that our systems are created or have evolved to be stable at 98.4. All our body systems. So what will happen at 101 we don't know.
Just to, no, that I think is precisely the point, that there is an opportunity for an evolution of the entire system into a new paradigm level. Yeah, I mean, I think that is what would make the optimists believe in future. However, by going reckless, you certainly would endanger the entire process much more. So here is a kind of incompatibility between the two situations. In one case, very recently, I'll just give you a small example. It comes to Delhi. Apparently in China, they have gone over to the desert area, put solar panels over there, and initially they had a problem that they suddenly realized that because of the temperature difference, dew formation, some gases started coming up, which blocked the solar panels, reduced their efficiency. What they have been able to do is to let the community around have ducks and other small animals and raise the level of the solar panels so that they now have a sustainable, apparently ecological system in converting the desert land into a greener area. Now these are all the possibilities. The point is whether we are going to build such possibilities or we are going to go into a reckless, say, Ukraine-Russia war, where you devastate an entire agricultural area through bombardment, through a war for whose benefit, except perhaps the military industrial complexes, benefit. One starts wondering. So, these are the two opportunities that one can talk about when you are talking about the technology.
If you look at the current situation in the world, and if you look at the scientific, see the basic information is coming from science. It is social scientists and policymakers who have to deal with that inference and try to do something. Scientists are not going to tell you, alright, or be able to do it. So there is an interdisciplinary kind of an issue. What is happening? Overwhelming science is telling you that while at the micro level there are possibilities, it's a magnum global problem, and unless we all put our heads together, there is an urgency because of an impending day that is going to come. You are looking at the clouds and you're saying, ekhuni ashbe jodta.
That is also true.
But then you are saying যে ঠিক আছে হবে এখন ছাতাটা সেলাই করি দেখ না গিয়ে ওখানে রেইনকোট সস্তায় পাওয়া যাচ্ছে কিনা ও তো বলেছে আরে একটা কি পঞ্চ পড়েছিল সেটা তো খুব সুন্দর সেখানে জল লাগে না, এই নিয়ে আমরা তর্ক বিতর্ক অনেক আলোচনা করছি। সেইভাবে দ্য আর্জেন্সিতে এগোচ্ছে না। কি হবে, ঝড়ে বাড়িটা উড়ে যাবে কিনা আমি জানি না, কিন্তু ওই ঝড় আমরা দেখিনি, এইটুকু ইস that what that will be we don't know, because the world has never been in that place.
Yeah, but getting back again to the extinction problem, there have been massive extinction of species, and yet the world has survived. That is also a historical lesson.
Those were not when human beings were there. When human beings are doing it, we are not nature.
Right.
That is the problem where I started with. We think we are nature. Nature is for us to suppress. Since we are not nature, we are doing it now. We don't know what the impact of that is going to be. No biologist worth his name will ever tell you that we will survive this extinction.
Professor Basu has a question.
So,
You first go, please do, sir. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
sir,
अरे बोलो ना.
I'm from humanities completely, so science. I was a journalist, so my questions are a little more direct, and so you have given me the courage to actually quote something from literature because you ended with Alice in Wonderland. So there is this line where it says that the creatures looked at the man and the pig from outside, and then from the pig to the man, and from the man to the pig, and by the third time they looked, they didn't know who was who. And then they go on to say that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than the others. So in this question, in the quotation that you put forward, and what I'm trying to say, and the current forest bill that has been parked in the parliament, don't you think that we are self-destructive, and we are trying to, and despite whatever, and the question mark gets even bigger today. That
This is we meaning India.
yeah, I'm talking about India, because there is this huge gap in between the global talk that's happening and the Indian walk that we are taking. So, where are we really heading? So that's my simple question.
You ask me where we are heading in terms of environmental efficiency. On an international ranking, we are last.
Yes.
Out of 144.
And we are trying to go further down.
Correct. If you look at the forest bill, and
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
that is in a way inhuman. But we are very proud that anything that the foreigners say which goes against us, we say it is conspiracy. Anything they say in our favor, we say because sides are also telling them.
Sir, আপনার question last হবে, তারপর Professor Bhagwan Rai will
Mine was not exactly a question, but in response to what Professor Thakur is saying, I have got a very simple, oversimplified model in my mind. That when I was just talking, I talked about development. The entire notion of development as we understand or as we follow in India is resulting from depletion of nature. Everything. There is a depletion of nature. Now, when you talk about sustainability, in the face of depletion, then there has to be repletion. Okay? Now, that repletion, as you were rightly saying, that using science and technology in some cases, the Western world is doing. We are also thinking of doing such things. But as the rule of technology or science goes, you are, again, in order to deploy that technology, unless it's a natural technology, as long as you do it through some artificial technology, you are taking the power from some source that is depleting nature. In that sense, the repletion that I am talking of is resulting in another depletion. So it is essentially a ball game of the rate of depletion and rate of repletion. Whether that can be sustainable or not, that certainly depends on technology, but being a technologist, I am not very hopeful about that. Because most of our technological endeavors, call it silicon or whatever, is being extracted from nature. So it's my view that unless we change the notion of development altogether and or reduce the rate of development that we are envisaging, we don't have any scope of survival. That's fine.
Okay, I'll just add one and then go to Professor Bhagwan Raj. Professor, of course, he will have the priority, because I especially invited him as an economist.
Actually, what I feel, what you were talking and what Professor Sir talked about, no, it's okay, my voice is very loud. Okay, so what we were talking about, the very notion of the development which we have created, because UNDP and all talks.
Recording is going on, so it has to be the microphone, otherwise it doesn't come in the recording.
So if you go to the UNDP definition and all that, all measures in terms of the consumption. How much electricity we are consuming, how much food consumption we do have, how much clothing we do have, how much sheltering and type of sheltering we do have, that is going to determine how developed we are, which is generally measured in terms of the per capita income and we all are running after that. So do we need to really think worldwide about that definition? Because what we are talking today was talked by Mahatma Gandhi almost 70 years back, when he wrote in the Harjan Patrika, where he wrote that if we are not going to change our lifestyle, if we are going to follow the Western notion, forget about the capitalism and the socialism and all, I am not going to talk about that because both followed the same track. History is evident. So if we are not going to change that and we are going to move ahead with this type of notions, we are inviting the destruction in the future. That is what is happening. Now, as we were talking of the present situation, what is the reality and how, because we are facing two challenges at the same time. One is the sustainability, climate change, and another is also to feed and supply the growing population. This is what I feel, this is a kind of the blind race. And the best strategy is to move ahead. What happens in the future? We'll see. Because if all of you are very qualified person, you would have studied about the Malthusian trap also. Long back, he professed that if we are going and population is going to grow, nature will take its own course of action. But Malthusian trap badly failed in 20th century. Nothing happened. We are moving ahead. We are better off. So the question is, can we stop ourselves at our level from being part of that blind race? We all know. But what is the best strategy? We have to think. Can we stop ourselves by not providing the developmental measures to our growing population? We are lagging behind that of the Western standard. So my own take is, there is no solution to this problem unless or until the whole of the world is going to change its very notion of the development and move away from the consumerism, which has become part and parcel of our life. I was surprised to sir, in Bangalore, in Christ University, I was attending a seminar on this issue only. Bangalore temperature is a natural AC temperature. In the month of May, June, all the time it is like that. 2030 of, right? It was a science, they were discussing about this carbon dioxide emission and all. Almost 20-30 of ACs were being used. What we are talking of? Does it make any sense? That's the bigger question. We need to think about it seriously. Sorry.
Let Professor Sin answer. Okay.
Yes. So, sir, I would like to.
I have a slightly more nuanced view on this. As an economist, I don't think material development in the material context of having a shelter, having clothes to wear, using sort of laptops or whatever, if you think of all the goodies that we have, there's a difference between consumerism and having a materially good life. That is my take. And consumerism is taking it to an extreme in the sense that we are all trapped in it. Frankly speaking, each of us in this room, if you just think of the number of shirts or dresses or saris you have, is it the minimum or is it more than the minimum? It's certainly more than the minimum. And we are not in the top 1% of people. 1% of the rich people have 50% of the world's wealth. Now, you bring that down, you make it, just arithmetically make it a little more even. Everybody can have a better life, materially barring the Mukesh Ambanis and Bill Gates of the world. And they are very few in number, but they can provide for the 99%. But we will not allow that because we are too worried to touch them, because they feed the political system that runs our governments everywhere. That is private property capitalism, and you cannot touch them because they will throw you out, they will get somebody else who will be compliant and obedient. That is saying it starkly, but I think that we may need to make a decision. I don't think we can go back, much that I respect Gandhiji for his on violence, his views on violence. I don't think we can go back to wearing the dhuti and chakro and having a kholom on our feet. That is not possible. The world has liberated us to a larger extent, the materiality of our development. But consumerism, inequality, that is unacceptable in my opinion. And that is why I said that much as intergenerational inequality is important, the crux of the issue of sustainability, intragenerational inequality is equally important if you look at resource use, access, etc. So there is a lot of wastage on the one hand at the top end, and there is a huge amount of intensive survival requirements on limited resources at the other extreme. That can go when you reduce the inequalities to a large extent, but that also I think is an impossibility. So much has been written, so much has been said, so much data has been collected, but that is
How to reach to that consensus?
Sir, I just add one point. As you mentioned about Bill Gates, so he has recently written a book, How to Avoid Climate Change. So there he has pointed out several reasons, out of which one is the most important for carbon emission. That is the real estate, building materials.
Cement. Actually, cement is one of the largest.
Total pollution of carbon emission is 37% is
Which Bill Gates has locked.
Huh?
Which Bill Gates has locked. In every country he has a house.
foundation আছে যারা ওই কাজগুলো করে।
Even though he has a house in every country.
না না that's
আচ্ছা,
not.
অনুপ আমি জিজ্ঞেস
No,
করছি
if you compare
So, I
with
don't
the-
think it's-
মাইক্রো ইকোনমিক্সটা দাঁড়ায় আনসাইকেবল কনজাম্পশন লিস্ট থাকলে
Let us not get into that debate.
মার্জিনাল ইউটিলিটিটা পজিটিভ হবে এবং সেটা ছাড়া দাঁড় করাতে পারবো না আমাদের সমস্ত কলেজ
সেটাই তো আমার নয়।
মানে করোনার
আমি
সময়
ফার্স্ট ইয়ার ছাত্রদের প্রথম শেখাই
অনেকদিন সমস্ত ইন্ডাস্ট্রি ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়াইড বন্ধ ছিল, মাত্র ফিউ পার্সেন্ট মেবি 3% পপুলেশন কমানো গেছিল, বিকজ মোস্ট অফ দ্য থিংস যেগুলো থেকে পপুলেশন পলিউশন মেনলি হয় সেগুলো তো চলছিল, তার মধ্যে কনস্ট্রাকশন একটা ছিল, এগ্রিকালচার ছিল, মানে দিস থিংস আর অলসো কন্ট্রিবিউটিং টু পলিউশন অ্যান্ড ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ। সো হাউ টু অ্যাভয়েড দিস থিংস, মানে আমরা অর্থাৎ উনি যেটা বলতে চেয়েছিলেন, মানে যেটা আমি বুঝলাম আর কি, যে আমরা সারা পৃথিবীর এসি বন্ধ করে দিয়ে বা গাড়ি চালানো কমিয়ে দিয়ে কিন্তু মাত্র ম্যাক্সিমাম 50% পলিউশন আমরা কমাতে পারবো। Maximum is coming out from the building construction and agriculture and these things which are very much important to us as of now. So how to avoid this?
Individual consumption of these things are only 2%. If you compare to American militaries, consumption. So আমরা কোথায় খুঁজবো কোথায় খুঁজবো না খুঁজে তা খুঁজতে পারি
হ্যাঁ আমরা খুঁজতে হবে
না সেটা হচ্ছে ওয়ার অ্যান্ড মিলিটারি তারা সবচেয়ে বেশি কনজাম্পশন করে কিন্তু আমাকে এখন ডক্টর ভগবান রায়কে একটা চান্স দিতে হবে যেটা অনেকক্ষণ অপেক্ষা করে আছে আমি শুধু একটাই লোকে একটু এক লাইন বলে যাবো সেটা হচ্ছে উলরিক বেক বলে একজন সোশিওলজিস্ট ছিলেন he was a German sociologist who wrote a book which was classic actually for all disciplines and taught in most American universities named Race Society. That how we have become race society. All these arguments are there and there are extra arguments also in terms of sustainable modernization. Vishal Jabar only big is a different story altogether. I have the pleasure and privilege to introduce Professor Bhagwan Roy, who is actually a celebrity in the sense that he has been working for this since probably he has done his PhD in sociology in 1993. He has MSc in American anthropology and a sociology PhD, and he is a professional associate East-West Hawaii USA fellow of West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, from professor at the Institute of former professor at the Institute of Technology Kharagpur, former visiting professor at the Rural Development of Central Indian Institute of Technology and ex-SDA at the Anthropological Survey of India. He was the former professor at the IDPM University of Manchester, Helsinki, Finland, SWFC in China and Indonesia also. He was former expert committee member of Biodiversity Management Committee and National Biodiversity Authority, Government of India. He is the founding director of IBRAD and he works also on this, and he's also a member of Task Force, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, expert of BMC, National Biodiversity Authority. Now, he typified concept of the biological, social and ecosystem as a whole and developed simple, practical, strategic, coherent approaches for demonstrative models of ecosystem-based approaches for participatory biodiversity management and sustainable livelihood. So here's a person who didn't work. I mean, we have been all asking questions, what can we do, what can we do? Maybe we have a model in front of us, Professor Bhagwan Rai, who has done it. Because his model of this one has been accepted by many people. And collaborative management of the natural resources like forest, agriculture, water, fishery, livestock. So the applying content of body of knowledge and skills, he has been conducting research, training, formal academic program and accredited with recognized body to address the problem of severe degradation of natural resources and social environment and human survival skills. So, Professor Bhagwan, this is what I got from Google, which you didn't give me, but I thought that was the most important contribution. So, here it is, sir.
So it is.
Thank you very much. I don't know what to say after the very learned discourse and compliments question from many of you. To me, I wanted to know more like this, at least some kind of solution, whichever is possible. And I will prefer not in the terms of a lecture, a conversation from the beginning only. We'll confine to 20 minutes. But let it be, and raise your hand and point at any point when you don't agree with me. So I want,
we cannot raise the hand.
yeah, I want at each point, if anyone disagree, I should discuss further. So we begin with conversation, agreeing with me. You agree on this point that whenever a question, we have already seen that when sustainable development there, we have so many questions in our own way described. How long we'll keep on describing this? So from the previous speaker, Arun Das, one thing was there, of many factor, loss of biological diversity is the major one in different form, from forests, soil pollution, agriculture. But the major cause was loss of biodiversity. You agree? It's not me, he and world say, IUCN report. Another point. If you want to address one important issue of biological diversity, which could be the best way? For that, we have to know where is the rich biodiversity, which is the area, and that will become the matter of concern, that land mass, the landscape, the ecosystem, which is responsible for rich biodiversity. The IUCN report says 80% of the rich biodiversity, is found in or around the habitat, ecosystem where world's indigenous population resides. Tribal, world. It is not India alone, in Africa, everywhere you will find. So, we agree with you.
I'm back behind you, so you cannot see my hand. So use my voice.
Yeah.
Would you say there are tribes in Europe?
Yeah. And the third point.
No, you didn't answer it.
No.
Yeah.
Would you say there are tribes in Europe?
Sorry?
Would you say there are tribes in Europe?
Huh.
There are.
Yes.
Do you tell me one book which talks about tribes of Europe?
Sorry?
Tribes of Europe. There are tribes in Africa, there is tribes in Asia, I understand. But where are there tribes in Europe? And are there
Tribes
books of
in
tribes
Europe.
in Europe?
She's asking whether there are tribes in Europe and whether there is any book on tribes in Europe.
Yeah, because I want to know, because this is
Yeah,
a particular position.
There is not one or two references are certainly there. Yes.
1, 2 references.
Yeah. And in India, coming back to India, 86% of the population are the tribal. So 8.6% population of the tribal. Now, let us begin some kind of attempt, experiment, that let there be some regeneration of the biological diversity. And when you want to take care of the biodiversity of the tribal area, can we ignore tribal and conserve biodiversity? Is it possible? We have to involve those tribal because they are the habitual in the ecosystem. So I'm going to share with you some silver lining of some approach how the tribal can be involved and biodiversity conservation as a part of climate change initiative or the climate action initiative. What's that? Is it possible? So, I'm going to say some of the recent concepts, and I believe there are many from different science, social science. We study social institution. I'm a sociologist, madam. Social institution, there are 5. Family, economy, education, the political institutions, and the religions. If we want to bring change, normally we are biased to contribute to a particular institution. Political science নিয়ে পড়ছি আপনি কি করছেন আমি ইকোনমি নিয়ে পড়াশোনা করছি আপনি কি করছেন I'm working on the religion. But if you want to bring change in any society, you have to see all 5 arms of institution that I mentioned and not call it pentagon. And this pentagon must be a coherent system, pentagon. I'll share where to start with the pentagon. And different arms of, different angles of pentagon, if opportunity were there. Now, in this pentagon, when we discuss on the 5 institutions, each institution has to address and think of ecological system, environment. Each institution, not one, not only economy alone. all has to address on that. Otherwise, you cannot address on that. So, if you want to address on the ecological, if you want to address on the environment, if you want to address on social level, we have to begin with the social. You have to talk to the people, their attitude, their behavior. And these social and ecological are interwoven. Look at this tribal, one of the, we were mentioning about the dangers of biodiversity. If this is the situation and there is a degradation of the biological diversity, where to start? Kotha theke shuru kora jabe. If we start kotha theke shuru kora jabe, where to begin? Again the story of elephant will come. So I don't want to that. We must agree at least one point today, yes, we have to start something. And what I am saying, is it scientific, it is being proved, or it is just my fantasy? Let's think of that. Here, whenever we study any phenomenon, we take as a system, and here I say, you were saying that human and environment, I say human and environment are the part of the system. Human is one part in the whole system. And if any part interacts, moves, it will have impact on other parts. System theory. We can't address any single part without impact on others. When there is a change in the environment, a particular disappearance of species, the behavior changes because they have to find options if the species is lost. So because of the environmental change, society changes. And society again, when they come to do some plantation, and if there is regeneration, the social and institutional both changes. This is how the now, since I am coming to tribal development, tribal institutions, you know the tribals, they have a sacred and profane attitude and behavior. Let me say one thing, we all are human beings and we are guided more of our, whether we like or not, something our sacred, which is common for all of us, Hindu, Muslim, tribal, non-tribal, we are conditioned. If I ask you, please take my mic, if I ask you, please sit down, no, you. Yeah, look at that, please sit down. Look at that, all came, move their right hand. One, if by mistake, my right hand busy, and if I am taking left hand, this is our conditioning thought. This is our sacred. But I ask you, when you respect your senior, which part of the body you touch? Which part of the body you touch to show respect? Feet. Why not nose? Did you ever think that? Why not nose?
In North India, they touch knees and not the feet.
Yeah.
So, it all varies. And in the Western countries, they won't touch anything at all.
No,
so
if you don't touch,
handshake.
No, if you don't touch, that's different.
So it's a culture specific. It's a culture specific.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the
Yes,
individual occasions.
very good, very good. Culture is big because Japanese don't do. Chinese will be surprised why you are touching.
In fact, they might shrink away from you.
Right.
Trying to approach them.
Yes, very
pass
good.
their hand.
So it is a culture specific, that means we are conditioned from the childhood with the culture. And same way the tribals are also conditioned of their culture. So we agree on that, we are conditioned with our culture, whether touch feet or not touch feet, whether that. So this is the point. And then one part is our condition, the culture is from the socialization. Another part we learn from scientific method.
Sir, why are you saying tribals?
No, I am going
we
to.
have some specific categories.
No, I
have problem with this term. And just let me say one thing. I have problem with the term. Because before 18th century literature, there was nothing called tribe.
Yes.
Only when colonization started, they created civilization and tribe. So why are we calling them tribals, not inhabitants, not indigenous people? I mean, this is where a epistemological problem is there.
Of course,
should we keep the question? This one, why we call tribe, why not indigenous? In just one sentence, I may say, so we can discuss
this later.
later. but here I can say the issue of indigenous in our country became very controversial.
Everywhere it is, sir.
Yeah,
Who is
it
indigenous
become
in the United
controversial.
States of America?
So
Who is
I-
indigenous in the United States
Yes.
of America? Everybody is an immigrant. There is no problem.
Yes.
We have created this.
Yeah, there were indigenous
are there in
people
America.
who were
They are indigenous.
kind of
So
wiped
there is no
out because of the
indigenous.
so-called
It's a
development.
country of migrants. It's a
Yeah.
country of migrants. So it's very
Bula, there was definitely
Yeah.
indigenous people in America
Yeah,
who
they
were
were
completely
Indians.
wiped
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
so-called civilized people going over there and developing
So,
the nation.
but they don't, they are not called tribals.
indigenous
Only in Asia and Africa they are called tribals, which
Yeah.
denotes
Migrants.
an absence of development.
Yeah, that is why I mentioned in the beginning, I will not touch those points which is controversial. I am not going to say whether I am indigenous or the Santals are indigenous. I am going to mention those who are enlisted in the document Government of India as
No,
scheduled
those
tribe.
were listed in the
Yeah, scheduled
census
tribe.
of
Yeah.
Britain.
Yeah, scheduled tribe.
Britain,
Yeah.
British census, they
Yeah.
are listed.
Yeah.
From then on we copied.
Yeah.
Before that, no other rulers, Hindus or Muslim or anybody listed them as tribes. That is the problematic part.
Yeah,
British
it
source.
the British use the term tribe,
Yeah.
denoting something.
That's why
and then
there is
the
no
definition
category.
of scheduled tribe. So whenever we mention about the tribe, we refer to what is already enlisted in the government as a scheduled tribe. We
In
mention
colonial.
that. Yeah. So anyway, since I am discussing on the tribal, I mean those who are the
No, go
enlisted,
ahead.
I am also using the area which is on the loss of biodiversity, so a particular field and by the particular community. So I am mentioning whether this is possible and what is the approach. Here, Professor Thakur here I have mentioned the culture, social order, because it varies from people to people. I ask the person who touches the feet them only, but all will not that they have got different culture. So social order is a part of the culture. Yeah. Now here I have already mentioned about if you have to want the institutional, you have to file at that. And how do we start it? Where do we start it? যদি শুরু করতে হয় এই ঘরে যদি শুরু করতে হয়, how we come to that? So eco chain method, raising awareness, has been well established methods where the cognitive knowledge is stimulated by asking questions. So when you ask questions, these questions are important, and by asking the community whether you want forest, water, agriculture field, livestock and human all for your village. Whether you want all five Panchatattva or want one, you know the answer. What if they say? They all say, we need all five. So such kind of questions are framed 4 questions, and that is eco-chain. If you want to see the detail of the eco-chain method, how to sensitize and create awareness about the community will come to a common agreement. What mentioned, what kind of temperature will be there, whether by chewing tobacco there will be cancer or not, that will be a debate. So how to avoid those questions which will be maybe may not be, what could be the specific will be one answer, and this is how this question is designed for specific. If you ask all human whether you need oxygen for your breathing or not, like this, what kind of questions are framed? And then for setting common goal, forming cohesive group, rules, regulation, institution, and the notion of the worldview. This is done with the tribal. And this social sequence, you will find, sir, those who are studying or teaching sociology in last 5 or 10 years, social sequence analysis has become very important. May not be here, but if you search on the Google social system sequence, you will find that society evolves with the steps. And these steps are the first from that, what people talk together in the family. কি নিয়ে আলোচনা করে, কি গভীর বিষয়। যেটা নিয়ে আলোচনা করে সেইটার সঙ্গে ইকোনমি কি সম্পর্ক আছে। So those issues in the family which is directly related to survival, that becomes the prime topic for discussion, and then how they take in turn in discussion. পাঁচজন যদি কথা বলে কার কথা লোকেরা শোনে, so taking turn, and then how they form the network. এই বাড়ি থেকে আলোচনা পর where would they go, কার সঙ্গে কথা বলবে, and then there's a hierarchy. So these are now well established research method on the social sequence, how to change society. So I'll be discussing with you not what is society, কি হচ্ছে, কতটা হচ্ছে, কি ভালো খারাপ. I'm going to say how to change, how to facilitate change, how to demonstrate কিভাবে সম্ভব কিছু ভালো করে দেখানো. How it is possible, or we just keep on talking, কোনটা করলে ভালো হয়, করে দেখানো. So quickly, I will show you how do we do it. The first thing is that wherever you want to initiate development, what Ibrahim has studied, we have to involve the government functionary first. Because no social scientist can bring change in the village, they can study. But ultimately change has to be brought, those who matter as a change agent, the government functionary, the act, the policy, or chara ami poriborton korte parbo na, government taski niye. So establish the first one. Is the bilateral matching institution, which is our published in 1992 only, that both how they will involve. So this is the case from the Baithak tribe of Baithak district of Chhattisgarh. And first this meeting. The second, these are 7 steps. I'll show you one by one. Setting common goal. গ্রামবাসীদের আলোচনা, ঠিক আছে জীবিকার প্রথম গোল কি হবে? So we'll come there. যদি বাঁচাতে হয় তাহলে কে এগিয়ে আসবে? So there are 7 steps one by one, and then I will show you how the steps are followed. So these are the Baithak tribe. The questions were given, and they were asked to set their common goal, decide yourself. It's a part of a participatory action research. Instead, social scientists provide them solution, or any scientist provide them solution, putting them question to them. And ask them, you discuss among yourself. You come with a solution and share with us. So this is a participatory action research involving community, finding answer. And then
consensus na hoy ki korbe?
Sorry?
Consensus
If
na
there
hoy
is
ki
no
korbe?
consensus, then what to do?
If there is no consensus, then what will happen?
If there is no consensus, you have to see how the consensus will come. That is the facilitation.
Sharapti na?
Yes. Because if there is no consensus, there will be confusion, and there will be discussion like elephant discussion. So you have to see when you want. The question is whether you want to breathe and need oxygen or not. This kind of question. So if you go on discussing on the consensus, people will doubt about the brain. If you want to food, whether something has to be done or not. So আমাদের ভাবতে হবে কিছু করার দরকার আছে কিনা, if this kind of discussion. So the questions are designed in such a way that people will come to. That is the beauty of the social action. Now after that,
না ওখানে যদি বড় লোক গরিব লোকের ডিফারেন্স কি হবে?
If there is difference, মানে বড় লোক ও গরিব লোকের difference হলে কি হবে?
yes, there are conflict resolution. If opportunity comes, I will tell you number of places where there was no consensus, there was a conflict because of the ulterior intention of some leader, how the conflict was resolved. This is a different issue.
Primarily, if there are people who have some inherent kind of linkage with the power that they yield
Yes.
within the social group,
Yeah.
they are not going to be yield
Yeah.
to the other concepts.
Yeah.
So, there, how are we going to sort of change the situation to social action?
Yeah.
Because a power loss, whether it is a notional power or an actual power, makes a huge difference to the cultural aspect in a society. And when the conflict is, yes,
The way I interpret what he's suggesting is, take this typical case of a village. That village is already vulnerable because because of biodiversity loss, there is a tremendous amount of livelihood that is being damaged, ways of life that are being challenged, and they are at a loose end in a way. Then there is this intervention coming in, and they are half reconciled to taking some action for survival.
I
So
understand that,
those
but-
power erosion will take place.
No, but my point is that change in the biodiversity situation can come from two sides. If it's an external force, then it might be easier for the group to be organized to battle out the external force. That is quite obvious. But what if the endangerment comes from the power struggle within the structure? That's my question.
No, that's natural. I tell these are theoretical issue and I must touch it. Wherever human will be forming a group, there will be power and intention to overpower. It's a continuous process. You can't go about that. This is one. Secondly, the conflict between those who have and have not is natural as a natural for evolution, struggle for existence. So while this is going on, as we have mentioned, we have to see how to facilitate. And in case there is no solution, no consensus, the community will suffer. But that power game will be continuous and hierarchy is a natural process. আমরা বলি আমরা সবাই সমান এখানে ছোট বড় কেউ না, is wrong. There is a hierarchy always. The power game will be there. How to facilitate? That is the issue what he has also mentioned about the power. So what I am saying, how this, but each one, it's not that each consensus, each village, the first meeting, the consensus. No, it's not that. There are also divisions. There are also conflict. I will tell 1 or 2 points of the conflict. Those who are the forest dwellers, Adivasi, tribal, they have not much agricultural land. They depend more on the non-timber, timber, and also some kind of fringe on the fruits. In the same village, those who are having a big mass land, agriculture, they will try to draw the groundwater for the irrigation. And some of my friend Dr. Firoz is working for the pasture. Those who are developing pasture, some tribal, for their own kids or bakri or small one, the bigger graziers will breed their livestock and take it away. So it will be always there, the power game in the natural resource management also, we have mentioned at many places. But here how you have to make a balance. That is the job of the social scientists you are mentioning. How you resolve that those who are drawing more water from the ground and causing disaster for maybe, how you are sensitizing them, it is for today only, tomorrow you will not get us groundwater. So how you do, that is the main business of sensitizing, making awareness and making people realize that this is not easy. It's not as simple, have a meeting and it will be consensus. As you have mentioned, it's not easy, but there are skills for that. And that is what I am sharing. How, বলুন।
আমার প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে যে এইটা আপনি যাদের সঙ্গে কাজ করছেন, there is a particular segment of population যারা কিন্তু ক্লাইমেটের উপর আক্রমণটা অনেক কম করে।
বিলকুল খুব কম।
গ্রামের লোকেরা
নেই বলতে খুব কম। But they are the sufferers.
They are the sufferers.
They are sufferers.
কিন্তু আপনি দেউচির প্রবলেম কি করে হ্যান্ডেল করবেন?
They are the sufferers.
না, দেউচিতে যেমন বা বাইরের একটা ফোর্স এসে ওখানে মাইনিং করবে, তাতে সাস্টেইনেবিলিটি ধ্বংস হবে, সেই জিনিসটা তো এরা করছে না, করছে বাইরের একটা ফোর্স ফর সাম notion of development, whatever it is.
I also don't agree with excessive mining.
Mining is an example.
I don't. No, you are right. I don't agree. But একটা কথা বাংলা এত শেয়ার না। আমি খুব শেয়ানা, যেখানে সম্ভব কিছু করলে ওখানে আগে করে দেখাবো, যেখানে মাইনিং আমার হাতে নেই আমি যদি চেঞ্জ করতে পারবো না ওখানে মাথা ঘামাবো না। Although I agree that over harvesting of any mine will be disaster, but I can't do anything. It does not mean যেখানে পারবো সেটা করবো না। So I do this.
Sir, I think Professor Basu যেটা বলছেন, he is talking about ইচ্ছে, intent.
হ্যাঁ,
he is talking about whether এই যে মাইনিং করতে আসবো, আমি যে এনক্রোচমেন্ট করব, আমি এনক্রোচমেন্ট করব না করব না, এই ইন্টেন্টটাকে আপনারা মানে যে করবে ভাবছে তার এই ইন্টেন্টটাকে আপনারা কিভাবে সেন্সিটাইজ করে সেটাকে থামাতে পারেন?
না না, আমি ওরকম হাতে নেইনি এখন, আমি সেটা বলবো। I know that's a very big issue. I can tell my practical experience. Latima knows. No. Latima knows it. We had got 2 offers from Chhattisgarh for sensitizing the tribal for handing over the land. আমি জানতাম না যে আমাদের এঙ্গেজ করা হয়েছে কি ট্রাইবাল দিস ইজ দ্যাট, কিন্তু আমি যখন গ্রামে গেলাম and I had a discussion with the people near Balco company of Chhattisgarh, and after 1 or 2 days in the night guests of the tribal came and told, you know what for you have invited. I said yes, it is the meeting with you, you will get employment. But no sir, then they explained me, and after 2nd and 3rd day I spoke to the Balco company, sorry I'm going to withdraw my term, I cannot. So I came out and other consultant hired and they did it and the mining continues. So যেটা আমি পারবো না I will not do. তার মানে এই নয় যে যেটা পারবো
আপনাকে বলছি না, আপনার যে অ্যাপ্রোচটা সেই অ্যাপ্রোচটা therefore will not scale up in spite of its best intentions, because যারা এবার বাল্কো যাদের কনসালটেন্ট হিসেবে নিয়োগ করলো তাদের মাসুল পাওয়ার অনেক বেশি তারা করে দেবে।
Yes, I agree with you. No, I agree with you. And the beginning I mentioned that I am not in favor of over harvesting mining. I am not. I am not at all. Yeah, I am not at all. But there are certain things I cannot do.
I'm going to make a very controversial statement. It's fairly circulating now. We recently have had a horrendous experience going on in Manipur. There's a conflict between the 2 tribal groups.
Yes.
One of the reasons which has been going around but not said explicitly is there is an opportunity for resource extraction, and that is why a particular tribal group had to be moved out and this conflict ensued. And this resource extraction is linked to one of the most powerful monetary group in the country. So when you know what you are talking about, I appreciate that very much, but in a kind of a game-changing order, these are the external forces which are so powerful and so extreme and backed by the government, because the government is theirs. So how would this pan out in such situations? I mean, as an individual case, what you have said that I can always withdraw. But unless there is a consensus amongst a larger population that we are going to oppose this, which would have generated enough relationships among themselves to challenge that path, it would be extremely difficult to maintain any kind of sustainability within any area. Because this kind of exploitation, I can give the other explanation, at the global level. Right now we have a Niger conflict.
Absolutely, sir.
The conflict is not because of the what was being touted around by Islamist jihadist group having relationship. It was essentially the right to mining of uranium.
Yes.
And people are ready to go into a military intervention to protect those mining rights of the French companies.
Yeah, I know.
And the reason the French depend on that is 15% of their uranium is obtained from those mines, and France has gone into a quote-within-quote renewable energy scheme, which is dependent on 80% on nuclear power, which is the fuel that they want to extract out of this area. So, you know, when we try to talk in a global context, we have to also become aware of these kind of forces which are going against whatever intervention that you might be talking. That's
No, I agree with you. And I also tell that in near future, there is still a mammoth is getting ready. You must have seen recently when this government of India has provided opportunity for the Parliament Diversity Act modification. So there are many more dangers at the way.
Recently,
Yes. So many more dangers are coming. I always say there are many more dangers, there are many more black in the sea. But what are the scientific methods through which we can at least 4 or 5 or 10 villages? And if that is done, what is the lesson learned for the method? How to sensitize, how to resolve conflict, how to involve community, how to have their livelihood. This is what I am going to share with you. Now, after the plan is done, then how the same villagers have learned on the organic farming and for their agriculture together for the kitchen garden. And then this is one of the incidents from the West Bengal, how the women learn. We are talking about the gender systemization, the women empowerment. Women they learn preparing the natural resource management from the disaster and to avoid a chemical pesticide. So these are things. My intention is how a change is brought and how villagers adopted appropriate technology and practice. This is my intention to demonstrate it is possible. And then this is another from the again tribe, Lodha, primitive tribe from the Odisha, Panchagoria. This is a unique experiment. How a small group of small family, they will have a water body for conservation of water, rainwater harvest. They will have fish, and around that they will have kitchen garden and medicinal plant and fruit tree. 5 kinds of benefit from Panchagoria. This has been developed by the tribal their own experiment, and now it becomes a model for replication for Panchagoria for conservation-based livelihood. And then it's very interesting again from those who are from sociology, anthropology. To identify some change agent. Each community, each society has got some change agent. How to identify the change agent and evolve with the co-adaptation. And use the word co-adaptation. The reason how the tribal and non-tribal can adopt certain common thing together. So it's our bias. It is the tribal there. It is the non-tribal. There are many things in co-adaptation.
Sir, in Manipur, the conflict has been deliberately portrayed in tribal and religious terms because Meiteis are Muslims and Kukis are Hindus.
Sorry, madam, Meiteis are not Muslims. You are mistaken.
No, Meiteis are Muslims.
No, I know. I do have many. No.
The Meiteis are Muslims.
No, madam. Meitei community is Hindu community there.
No, but Hindus, Kukis are Hindus.
I have friends.
Sikhs.
Cookies are Christians.
Cookies are Christians. Religious conflict এসে গেল। মুশকিল।
Cookies are Christian.
পয়েন্টটা তা নয়। পয়েন্টটা কেন হয়েছে সেটা এইভাবে রিলিজিয়াসাইজ করা হচ্ছে এবং দেখা হচ্ছে।
No, that is true. But basically, it is the tribal land right
Yeah.
from which the cookies would be deprived,
That's it.
so that the exploitation of that mining area can be given. It has already been given to the largest economic group in the country.
Sir, that's.
Land right, this is where,
This will be
this is where I have problems. Land rights of tribals, land rights of everybody. Urban land rights ও থাকবে তো।
না, সেটা নিয়েই তো প্রশ্ন হচ্ছে।
Of course সবার রাইট নেই। আরবান এরিয়াতে সবার রাইট আছে।
আমি কি বলছি?
সবাই ল্যান্ড ওন করে আরবান এরিয়াতে।
Actually, the problem lies in
You are still politicizing in the terms of the government. The government in terms of politicize করলে এটা হবে। This is not that issue. মানে নেকেট করে রেপ করে মারাটা যদি এখন ইস্যু হয় between two না between groups of people.
Anyway, this is a different story and different context. What I am sharing here, in the same landscape, we must have seen the tribals have more malnutrition. The same landscape where non-tribal have lesser malnutrition. The human development index of tribal is lower than the non-tribal. So what I wanted to share here, how in the same landscape where the tribal have more malnutrition, backwardness, can be improved upon through co-adaptation where the different community work together instead of in isolation. That was the purpose of this. And this is how they are learning on the plant nursery for improvement. And then this is again indigenous knowledge, and the community got organized after formation of the group. The stream water is conserved for the irrigation water conservation. They have been trained on the vermicompost for organic farming, and more of the kitchen garden they sell in the market. What I wanted to share with you that through this sensitization, cohesive group formation and training, there has been physically verifiable demonstrative changes in conservation of biodiversity and livelihood, and it's possible. This is my intention. And some of the indigenous seed, like this year we are celebrating millet year. There are varieties of seed which are indigenous, and it's a land race. It has got potential to grow in the very distressed condition, with the less water, high temperature, the moisture, without any manure. But these seeds are getting eroded now. So how to conserve those indigenous seeds which are responsible and they are more nutritious compared to PTS food supply. So developing seed bank, they will conserve a seed bank.
Are these seeds more costly? Are these seeds more costly?
No, not more costly in that way.
Not that.
No, not that. Maybe after conservation, when they're brought to mainland, to the urban, it becomes expensive if they become rare. But before it depleted, before it becomes rare, it is conserved through seed bank because it's very appropriate. So,
but if it is less costly and more productive,
it's not very costly in that period.
Then other farmers will adopt it.
Yes, they can adopt.
Basic economy.
Yeah, it can, but it's not very costly there. Yeah.
There is another problem. Actually,
and here
I am sorry. When the hybrid seeds are there, they would tend to destroy these indigenous varieties.
You are right. And that is the danger. That is the danger of what Dr. Thakur also mentioned. So many dangers are there. And this seed company have destroyed, they have purchased indigenous seed by paying higher price, and the farmers happily paid. And they give the seed and they destroy it, because each time they have to buy from seed from the this company. So in order to avoid that, seed bank is one of the strategy by the villagers. A very important point. And now here, just last point, we become very romantic. Traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge. Sometimes traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge becomes bottleneck for development. I'll give you one or two examples. Many of the tribals, they don't attain public health system, antenatal care, postnatal care. They still continue the home delivery. This causes higher mortality rate of the children. Some of their practices about this water for particular stream, or some of the plant about the taboo, has also a negative impact on the health of the tribal. So, being just a bloody romantic of all tribal knowledge, all indigenous knowledge to be conserved, it is dangerous. It is now cultural construct to understand, whereas some of the knowledge are very important, still very relevant of medicinal plant. So we have to understand, not very blindly, we have to conserve all traditional knowledge. And lastly, by understanding the relevancy of indigenous knowledge, by understanding what are the constant bottleneck of the development, we can discuss again with them to overcome the biasness, or also have the faith. Their sacred grove with the holy religious plant they conserve is very important. That traditional sacred grove for biodiversity, the globally famous, the sacred grove. So this is the first thing that we have to understand about the traditional knowledge, conservation and social hierarchy, and it can be implemented to a model. Now replication depends again what he mentioned, if you make it the policy and by the government, and what Professor Nivedita also mentioned, if you make it the bigger one, how to replicate it so that the people who are on the mining, they can also organize to conserve it and fight against that. For that, you need to realize. So, thank you very much. And I always wanted to have conversation whether you agree step by step this method or not. So, you agree. Thank you so much.
I have one more point to sort of make. You know, you're referring to the overpopulation aspect. Now, in the so-called developed world, it is fairly established that the population growth actually is dwindling.
Yes.
And it is coming almost to 1% level, or even less than that in some of the areas, like Japan and others. They are going to face what is now called the geriatric problem, the old age problem, and how to sustain their society based on a smaller population of younger people being productive enough. I mean, this would be also a question to you. So when we are talking in terms of the population growth being such that it does not become sustainable, are we also not looking at this aspect, that with a greater amount of affordability spread down to those who need it most, this kind of problem would perhaps reduce its impact on the society much more rapidly than perhaps what we are anticipating today. Because the overpopulation growth is mainly concentrated in those areas where the people have the least amount of work opportunity and leisure opportunity. So in a way, at least the basic material level development, shouldn't this be viewed as a positive way of trying to overcome the overpopulation thing, as distinctly compared to what the Malthusian sort of concept was, that we won't be able to produce enough food, and hence disaster would strike. Rather, with the kind of a material development wisdom. This is one, and for you, the other question is, you have mentioned it lastly at the indigenous level problem, that not everything, it is true that the indigenous population has a health issue and other issues which is quite often coupled with the cultural aspect. Now when you see that, isn't there a danger, as they say, that there is a cultural aggrandizement of the more powerful segment of the society? How would you respond to that? I mean, these two are different questions.
কাকে প্রশ্ন
না দুজনকে দুটো আলাদা প্রশ্ন
দুজনকে দুটো আলাদা
কে যাবে চেয়ার ক্যান ডিসাইড
Chair doesn't decide. Since Anup Sinha spoke first, Anup Sinha will answer.
On the population issue, I have a number of takes, but I don't want to go into a lengthy lecture. One of course is the way that the problem of sustainable development is posed is one rider to it is that the world is overpopulated. This is all regarding the question of carrying capacity of the world as an ecosystem and estimates of carrying capacity which has varied from 2 billion to 16 billion, and we are already 7 billion plus. What I tell people about overpopulation, it's a question about access to resources. Now, if I say that the world is overpopulated, this is what bothers me, and I don't want to get into that kind of an argument, is because then some people must be surplus. So who told me I am not surplus? Who the hell told me that I have a right to some resources in this world? I have some human rights. Maybe I am that surplus fellow who needs to be chucked out. So that is very demeaning. I don't want to get into that argument. But I still think that given as of today what resources we have is enough for a decent living. This is where I say it's not Gandhi going back to how we lived in the villages 300 years ago.
No, I'm not asking you to go back to Gandhi's days.
All I'm saying is somewhat material, but not the kind of thing that we do. There are measures made in terms of resources that if everybody in the world lives like an average North American citizen, average, not the millionaires, average, say bank teller or something, then we will require 5.5 planets to sustain that amount of resource use. And we have only one at our disposal so far, though I think Stephen Hawking said before he died, colonize the moon. Right? And maybe Chandrayaan is going now, Modi may want to colonize the moon. Mellow, dramatic enough to say that. But on the population issue, if you look at the world as it stands today, we have a distributional problem. Right? All this issue of demographic dividend and all that, we need a redistribution. But redistribution means we need some workplaces also where it can be done. For instance, in Japan, you gave the example of Japan, there is a shortage of younger people. Alright, but there are not as many jobs, they don't have a shortage of jobs. So their production system has evolved in a way that they can be more productive with lower people. So I can't now transplant some people there. The only way, in fact I did a project, so that's coming to mind, on giving remittances from abroad. Bangladesh is the highest receiver of remittances from. I did this for Danish foreign aid agency. We went to Japan to find out what kind of people. Japan, the biggest need in Japan was caregivers for geriatrics. Caregiver for geriatrics, Bangladesh would be an able potential to give young people who could go even learn the language. They tried it on a pilot project, the Danish government failed horribly. The old Japanese said, nothing doing that, they are not us. They are not Japanese, so I am not going to take any care from them. What they did was they got hold of Philippines who were enough chinky-eyed and oriental looking, taught them Japanese, the Philippines were accepted. So it's a basic cultural issue. But I think this redistribution problem is required. Now, one more minute, where my sleep goes away, if you might say at night, is on this technology issue, the way we are going in terms of artificial intelligence, etc. There will be a huge amount of surplus people in the world, all over the place, in the next 20, 30, 40 years.
10 years.
That is almost 10 years. So I'm just being a little more conservative, that will immediately go. The reason is, see, people immediately tell me, if I ever make this, is that, oh, it was true when the computers were coming, that everybody would lose their jobs, but we actually ended up having more jobs. It's true, but now the kind of technologies where the machines can actually take decisions on their own and act. So autonomy of the human individual is going to be challenged. And the skills that you require will be of a much higher order, and some of the new jobs will be taken up by those machines. So the new jobs that will be created. So now you already have a population which apparently prima facie looks more than what the carrying capacity of the earth, mal-distributed. You know, there are shortages and there are surpluses, but there's a mismatch, it's not functioning, and we are looking at a glut of more human beings, useless in the sense that they cannot be, they have to be fed, they have to be given some resources, or put into concentration camps. Some of us might do that because the world is also turning authoritarian everywhere along the world. And so you are looking at either concentration camps or people who have to be fed. And that is a nightmarish kind of dystopia that you can think of. But right now, if we could redistribute, but remember, the biggest problem that people get worried about is immigrants. Sorry? Immigrants. So when you look at international repositioning of people, that's perhaps a non-starter. Most of the people in the developed world, or here also, Bangladeshi illegal immigrant bar kore daw. So you look at Europe, the restlessness.
Now going through a terrible crisis right now. Because most of the countries, UK, Italy, Germany,
France,
মানে অ্যাপারেন্টলি অতটা নয়, কারণ যারা ঢুকেছে তাদের নিয়েই একটা কালচারাল প্রবলেম। কিন্তু জার্মানিতে জার্মানি, পোল্যান্ডের সাথে রাশিয়ার যুদ্ধ হবে কি হবে না, এটা তো বেসিক্যালি ওই মাইগ্রেন্ট ইস্যুতে। আর গ্রিস টিসের কথা আমি বলছি না, কেন ওরা দে আর দ্য lowest run economy, but Italy is in serious trouble যে কারণে এই ধরনের, এবং ইউকে তো হ্যাজ টেকেন রুয়ান্ডাতে পাঠিয়ে দিবে বা বার্জের মধ্যে লোককে রাখবে, এই সমস্ত মানে উদ্ভট জায়গা দিয়ে জাস্ট টু প্রোটেক্ট হিজ prime ministership. Rishi Sunak is ready to do all those kind of acts.
So unlike Bula, I am not optimist, I am a forced pessimist. There's a famous line of Brecht's Kavita chilo na, he who has a smile on his face has not heard the terrible news.
Yeah, but প্রশ্নটা আবার বিকাশ করতে হয় বলবো যে ইন্ডিজিনাস পিপল, আমি ট্রাইবাল কথা আবার বলছি না, ইন্ডিজিনাস পিপল যারা সেগমেন্টেড অবস্থায় রয়েছে তাদের ক্ষেত্রে অনেকগুলো জায়গা যেটা আপনি লাস্টলি পয়েন্ট আউট করেছেন, দেয়ার আর হেলথ ইস্যুস এন্ড আদার থিংস, ইভেন দ্য এগ্রিকালচার ইস্যুস। তাদের মধ্যে যারা প্যাস্টোরাল সেগমেন্ট, তাদের আমি যদি আজকে রাতারাতি চাষবাসের জিনিস শেখাই, will that border on cultural advancement? কেন এরা তো এদের কালচার, এবং এই ডাইকোটমিটাকে as a sociologist how are we going to handle? But there's a question.
হ্যাঁ, দেখুন আমি একটা কথা বলেছিলাম, আমরা অনেকবার খুব রোমান্টিক হয়ে আদিবাসী ট্রাইবাল বলুন, ইন্ডিজিনাস বলুন, তাদের কালচার যে ওরা যেরকম আছে ওরকম থাকা দরকার, আমরা ডিস্টার্ব করবো না। 20 বছর আগে আমি ওইটাই কথা বলতাম, কারণ অ্যাজ এন অ্যানথ্রোপোলজিস্ট, সোশ্যালজিস্ট, আমাদের এথিক্সে we don't have right to change the culture of others. আর তখন আমি দেখলাম ঠিক আছে যে সোশ্যাল সায়েন্টিস্ট আমরা যাব, স্টাডি করব, উইল রেসপেক্ট देयर কালচার, যা যেরকম আছে, জঙ্গল থেকে ভালো সুস্থ আছে যেভাবে আছে। তারপর দেখলাম আমরা সোশ্যাল সায়েন্টিস্ট রেসপেক্ট করব খুব ট্র্যাডিশনাল কথাগুলো নিয়ে, কি আমাদের অধিকার নেই। পরে দেখলাম যে মার্কেট পিপল, কোকা-কোলা, they change their culture. Politicians change their culture. News agency change their culture. Smartphone has brought drastic change in the tribal. I'm like, hey, then I'm not social scientist, I'm not anthropologist, I'm human being. I will also change to see that malnutrition ওদের যদি কালচারে থাকে কোনো কারণে হোম ডেলিভারি বা হেলথ সেন্টারে যাবে না, I will change it. ইমিউনাইজেশন করাবার নেই কারণ তাদের কালচার ভয়, তো I will not that. কোনো আদিবাসীদের এমন আছে যে ধরুন কিছু খাবার কোন সময়টা ওই জঙ্গলে পাওয়া যাচ্ছে না, ওটা নিয়েই খাবে, এবং সেটা যখন নেই কিছু খাবে না, so this must be changed. I will also tell few things, যেমন মানকেরিয়া, বীরহোর, তারা জঙ্গলে চারি গাছের ছাল ছাড়িয়ে দড়ি বানিয়ে বিক্রি করে, আর অনেক মিউজিয়ামে ডকুমেন্টেশন, ছবি তুলে, the art and craft of the tribal, and it was studied, it was found কি যত শিয়ালি গাছের ছাল ছাড়াচ্ছে সেই গাছগুলো তো আস্তে আস্তে মরে যাবে ছাল ছাড়াবার পরে, এবং ওই দড়ি তো বাজারে এখন কম বিক্রি হচ্ছে কারণ নাইলা দড়ি চলে এসছে। So should we continue শিয়ালি গাছে মানকেরিয়া ওইরকমই দড়ি বানাবে? No, because in any case they are changing, they will keep on changing. কিন্তু আবার যেটা আপনি বললেন কিছু জিনিস এমন ভালো আছে যেটা আমি বললাম কালচার ট্র্যাডিশন, যেমন আমার কলিগ বললো যে যেমন সুনামি যখন হলো, during tsunami, জারওয়াল, they're living on the seashore, in the surprise সুনামির সঙ্গে জারওয়ার কোনো ক্ষতি হয়নি, একটা জারওয়া মারা যায়নি, কিন্তু পাশে নিকোবর অনেক মারা গেছে। নন ট্রাইবাল they will swept away. Why? Because these Jarwas knew they can understand the wave. From this knowledge they could predict there will be tsunami, and they all move with the family on the hilltop, and they stayed there, and they warned others among the Jarwa. By looking at the movement of people and walk, they can predict about the rain. If the birds chat, they can see ki kokon bonna ashbe. So there are many traditional knowledge which is very helpful. It's for not only them, from many humanities, so we respect them. কিন্তু সব ট্র্যাডিশনাল নলেজ ভালো তা নয়, আর whether I like or don't like, they are going to change. It's a question of beginning. It's a question of beginning.
সব মডার্ন নলেজও ভালো
না কে বলেছে মডার্ন ভালো?
ভালো না,
ভালো নেই তো,
সেটাই তো, সুতরাং একই
চেঞ্জ হবেই, চেঞ্জ ইজ এ কন্টিনিউয়াস প্রসেস, ইটস এ কোয়েশ্চন অফ ডিগ্রি, ইটস এ কোয়েশ্চন অফ ডিগ্রি।
লিটল আন্দামান এটসেট্রা এইসব জায়গায় তো ব্যাপক ক্ষতি হয়েছিল।
লিটল আন্দামানে অঙ্গিতে হয়েছে, আমি বলছি মিডল আন্দামান জারওয়া,
কিন্তু তারা তো আরো মানে আইসোলেটেড ট্রাইবস,
যেমন কি কার নিকোবর তো পুরো বয়ে গেছে, হোল ডিজাস্টার কার নিকোবর, গ্রেট নিকোবরের তো পুরো বন্যা হয়,
কিন্তু তাদের কোনো মানে ওই রকম ইন্ডিজিনাস নলেজ ছিল কি?
আমরা just saying some of the knowledge of Jarwa, how it has saved them, whereas not others.
Origin of the indigenous knowledge যদি সার্ভাইভাল এর একটা রিলেশনশিপ থাকে, then they should have, কিন্তু এটা নিয়ে একটু ভাবনার ব্যাপার আছে। যাই হোক,
Actually, we need to distribute.
আমার ধারণা হলো আসলে